found yourself spiraling down a late night rabbit hole of what am I meant to do and why haven't I found it yet? And let's be honest, who hasn't? Then you're in the right place. I'm Theresa White, career clarity expert and 5-time certified career coach, and I'm here to help you navigate the question of how to find a career that truly lights you up. On Career Clarity Unlocked, we're all about those light bulb moments. I'm talking to people who are still trying to figure out what they're meant to do, coaching them live to reach that magical, yes, this is it moment. And we'll also hear from those who've already found their dream careers and figure out exactly how they did it. Whether you're looking for inspiration or actionable advice on finding a career you love, I've got you covered. Time to unlock some career clarity. Let's dive in. All right. Please tell me I'm not the only one who has ever ignored that gnawing feeling in your gut that something is just off. Could be stress, burnout, or just that general feeling about work that just won't go away. I've dealt with that for many, many years before I finally started listening to it. So I'm so excited that today we're going to dive headfirst into the fascinating world of why we get stuck. How our bodies are basically screaming at us to listen in their very own mysterious ways, and what happens when we finally do. We're talking sensation-based motivation, subconscious beliefs, and how your nervous system might be the real MVP behind your work stress. This isn't gonna be your typical just think positive prep talk. You know that isn't me. This is a deep, soulful, science-backed conversation about how real change starts in your body. So if you've ever felt like you're pushing through pain, stuck on a loop, or just ready to break free, you're going to want to settle in for this conversation. And I'm so excited because joining me today is the amazing Brian Trzaskos, the co-creator of the trauma-sensitive, sensation-based motivation coaching method. He has extensive experience in diverse settings, ranging from working at the world-renowned 𝗶𝗁𝘁cie Hospital for Neurological Rehabilitation, operating his own integrative wellness center in northern New York, and creating 2 internationally attended training institutions. As a practicing physical therapist and student of Eastern movement and mindfulness practices for over 30 years, Brian is a nationally recognized expert for his work in training health, wellness, and coaching professionals how to successfully overcome their core limiting beliefs, mental wellness, and chronic pain challenges with trauma-sensitive somatic coaching practices. He currently acts as the Director of Education at the Somatic Coaching Academy and earned his degree in physical therapy and trauma-informed organization certificate from the State University of New York at Buffalo. Welcome, Brian, to Career Clarity Unlocked. I am so excited to have you here on the show.
Theresa, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation. I've been listening to your podcasts, and I'm super excited to be here.
This is amazing, and I can't wait for this conversation. But to start off, I want to hear a little bit more about your story, if you don't mind sharing that with us. And I read that you speak about people being stuck or overwhelmed or burnt out and ready to quit. And I wonder if that is something that you've experienced in your own life, and if there's anything that shifted for you from stuck, overwhelmed, burned out, ready to quit to moving forward or moving out of that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. About 20 years ago, I had a pretty significant health crisis that was really inflamed by just stress and overwhelm. You know, stress and overwhelm at work, at home, with family, financially. It was kind of like a period in time where everything was kind of confluencing, and I wasn't aware of it because I was kind of the person who just took everything head on. And so I kind of had my head down, and until one day, so my background, my original training background is as a physical therapist, actually. So I was working as a PT at this little hospital in where I lived, way up in the northern part of New York State. And I was at a health fair, and I had my blood pressure taken at a health fair. My blood pressure was 179/97. It was like just way high. And so I ended up getting all of these tests done and all these kinds of things because my doctor was pretty concerned about it. And it wasn't until a couple weeks afterwards when all the tests came back negative and I didn't have any like organic problems that I should have, that I just broke down one day, I had an emotional breakdown. And as a part of that breakdown, I realized that how stressed I was feeling. And then I had this little bit of a wake up call, because I realized I had all these other problems at the same time. I had like acid reflux, I wasn't sleeping. I mean, I could give you the whole list of additional physical problems I was having, as well as mental, emotional challenges I was having, that all came back to basically this stress crisis that I was in, that was leading into a physical crisis and physical health problems. And I hadn't realized that a lot of that was because I was also feeling so stuck and challenged in my career, in my relationships. And it just happened to for me be showing up as these physical symptomologies and physical challenges. And so I really had to find ways to begin navigating that. And I was really dedicated and interested in not being on like medication for my symptoms. Like I wanted to know what the core root of my problem was. And so I was really committed to that. And that kind of launched me off on a whole life, a whole different life now. Like really where I am now was launched at that time in my life, from really wanting to understanding the root cause of not only disease, but a physical disease, but also behavioral challenges, feeling stuck, feeling overwhelmed, all those mental, emotional challenges that we deal with as human beings.
That's incredible. And before we go into that, what really stands out to me is that it's something I hear so often, I'm sure you do too, that we have all these physical sensations and we just keep going anyway. And then we look back at it, or someone looks in from the outside and they're like, whoa, something doesn't seem quite right. But when we're in it, we can't see it. And it stood out to me that your background is as a physical therapist, so you have that knowledge about the body. And it still was really hard to see it when you're in it. Is that something you see too a lot with other people?
Oh, almost all the time. Because, you know, for me, the belief construct that I was operating from at that time that was causing all of my physical challenges was, I also had mechanisms in place to protect that same belief system. So, you know, when we have like our subconscious, right, it drives our belief systems. And we have a little saying that our subconscious mind tells our conscious mind how to think about things. So we have a belief, and all of our behaviors and our choices and our decisions and our actions basically are outpourings or expressions of these beliefs that we don't even know that we have, because it's just the way that we grew up in the world. And those beliefs are also tied to safety, security, existence, all those kinds of things. So our subconscious mind is always kind of playing this double game. The double game is how far can we push the body without like actually killing it, while at the same time protecting the belief systems that are in place as long as we possibly can. And so a lot of people like continue to take on behaviors that from an outside perspective, an outside viewer look at them and go, those are obviously not healthy for you, but you keep doing them. And then the person inside of the behaviors has all these rational reasons why they need to keep doing the behaviors, because their subconscious mind is telling their conscious mind how to think about the behaviors, and they're perfectly rational to the person. But from the outside, you look at them and go, what are you doing? You're killing yourself. So it's like our subconscious mind really blinds our conscious mind to the downsides of the beliefs and the behaviors that we've been indoctrinating.
That's fascinating. And I see myself so in this, absolutely, of how stuck you are. And I really think that's the beauty of coaching, is because when we're so stuck in that container of like, this is our subconscious that is making us believe and act a certain way, we can't think outside of it.
Right. Yeah.
And that really brings us into overcoming limiting beliefs, because I think that's what it comes back down to, is that they really limit us in the way we act and think. And I'm really curious if there were any beliefs that you identified that held you back, and then how did you overcome and change?
Yeah, so you're speaking so eloquently to this, Theresa. You're exactly right, right? So these limiting beliefs become these hurdles or challenges or chains, however you want to kind of talk about them. And one thing I like to actually note is that at one time, all limiting beliefs were actually functional. Right. So a limiting belief today was a successful belief in the past.
Yes.
And so because it was successful, we hung on to it. Yes. And then as we go through life and we start to change and we want different things and we want to grow and adapt and all that kind of stuff, then an old successful belief can become a limiting belief today. And then we bump up into it. So for me, one of the biggest limiting beliefs that I had, especially at that time in my life, back there when I had that health crisis, was a limiting belief that hard work and sacrifice made me a valuable person.
Yeah.
Like actually, like the way you became a more valuable person in the world was through hard work and sacrifice. And
Mhm.
so I was basically working myself to death and taking on more than I could reasonably do in a healthy way, because subconsciously, the more I took on, the more valuable I would become. And I was really kind of hooked into wanting to be a valuable person, wanted to be a person who brought value into the world, wanted to be a person that offered other people opportunities, wanted to support my family, like all those kinds of things. And so I just kept taking on more and more and more. And the funny thing is about life is that when you have a belief like that, life then actually starts to show up to make you work harder. So in other words, for me, what would happen is that my house would actually my house would break, like things in the
Oh my
house would break,
goodness.
or the car would break, or something right would break, because that would mean that then I would have to work hard. It would give me something to work harder on to fix. Or I
Yeah.
would break things myself. I'd be fixing something and I would break it, and it would cost then twice or three times as much to have somebody else have to fix it than me fix it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, so you're
Yep.
literally, it's like a self kind of prophesizing sort of situation. My behavior was creating more opportunities for me to actually feed into the belief system. And I was just digging into that well.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really that having to come to peace and transform that limiting belief that the way that I was valuable in the world or even successful in the world was strictly through hard work and sacrifice. I've moved through several limiting beliefs consciously since that time, but that was the first one that I engaged with my eyes open. And I think that's why it was such a valuable learning experience for me.
That's so interesting. And I relate to that so much, that my self-worth and value is tied to being successful, working hard, having a title,
Yep.
all of those external measures of success that we're being taught. But in what way do you overcome a limiting belief when you work with your clients? Is it the approach of let's push it away and just think differently? Or is it an understanding of, oh, there's a reason for that belief, but can there be enough self-leadership to think differently?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. So we're of the kind of embracing mindset. We really have to embrace all parts of ourselves in order to move through anything at all. So we really can't let go of a limiting belief until the limiting belief gets acknowledged for the value it is providing. And
Mm-hmm.
so in our sensation-based motivation coaching process, we have four parts: become aware of, decode, modify, and reframe. And so when we're dealing with limiting belief, the very first thing we have to do is become aware of not only the limiting belief, but all four parts of the limiting belief. So every belief is a pattern, and
Mm-hmm.
a belief lives in the body. It doesn't live between our ears. A belief lives in our bodies. And so a pattern has four parts. It has a sensation part, a thought part, a word part, and an action part. So the sensations, thoughts, words, and actions, that's the four parts of a somatic pattern. And a limiting belief, any belief, whether it's limiting or empowering, doesn't matter, has these four parts. So if you're working with a limiting belief that we want to learn how to transcend, let's say, or transform, let's say, then we have to understand all four parts of that limiting belief. And we have to understand how it shows up in our life currently. We have to show up how it's adding value to our life currently, like what we're gaining from it currently. So we have to understand as much as we can. We have to befriend it. We really have to become very, very knowledgeable and friendly with that belief, and so that we can basically understand what it needs, and then how we actually meet the needs that the limiting belief is trying to do. And if we can meet those needs, then there's no more reason for that limiting belief to be active. Now, I think all those limiting beliefs, we don't really ever eradicate them. In the work that we do, they'll atrophy, they'll become kind of weaker because we're not using those as much. But we definitely don't push the belief away. We're definitely of the mind that what you resist persists, kind of
Yes.
that Jung quote. So it's like we know that that doesn't work. So what we have to do is really pull it closer to us. But we do all that work from a sensory base, Teresa. So we're working with it intellectually, but we work with it intellectually after we work with a sensory base, because that's what's really stopping us from taking a different action in the world is our sensory base.
That's super fascinating. Love that approach. And I want to hear more about that. And as we touched on earlier, we grew up and are told, right, success, that's money, that's title, that's status,
Yeah.
goals, whatever it is, right? And that's what we're motivated by. And something I read from you is that you talk about
Yes.
sensation-based motivation.
Yes. Yep.
Is that the sensation that you just talked about? And what does that mean, that sensation-based motivation?
Right. Yeah. So when we started working with this, and by we, I mean my wife and partner, Ani, and myself, who were the co-founders of the Somatic Coaching Academy, we started working with this. It came from an understanding of, again, I'm a physical therapist. Ani was trained as an occupational therapist. So we really come out of this like physical therapy world. And from a neurological perspective, Theresa, we are based on what we call sensory in, motor out function, our nervous system. Our nervous system functions on sensory information comes into the system, and then we have a motor response to that sensory information. Now that motor response, by the way, creates a different sensory input, motor output, and then we're in a loop, right? Then it's chicken and the egg, like what comes first, I don't know what started, but after a while it doesn't matter, but we're still in that loop of sensory in, motor out, sensory in, motor out, sensory in, motor out. So on a very basic functions, like I know you said you have little kids, right? And so like being hungry, like peeing and pooping, like those things come with distinct sensory experiences.
Yeah.
And then what we hope as parents that our children identify those sensory experiences early enough where they can get themselves to the bathroom.
Yes.
Right. But we have to
Makes
teach
sense.
them that, okay, so over time, they're like, oh, that what I'm feeling right now is the need to go to the bathroom. What I'm feeling right now is I need food. So all of the very basic physiological survival mechanisms are based on this idea. Thirsty, hungry, peeing, pooping, sexual drive, all that kind of stuff is based on this sensory experience. And then we're motivated, and that tells us then we need to do something, then we're motivated to take care of that need. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Yes.
Okay. So that's the basic foundation of how our nervous system works. Now, what seem to be more complex behaviors are still based in that, by the way. It's not like all of a sudden our nervous system changes for more complex behaviors. We're still based in that idea. So even whether we recognize it or not, when we go through the day, the decisions we're making, even the clothes we're choosing to wear for the day, what we're choosing to eat, put in our bodies for food, like how we have conversations, who we have conversations with, think about all the things during the day that we're basically deciding on. Those are all being driven from some sort of sensory cue, whether we realize it or not. And that's your subconscious mind cueing you to do certain behaviors that are in alignment with, like we talked about, the beliefs.
Interesting.
Right? And so when we get to a change point, this is really fascinating. So oftentimes people get to a change point and they're like, I want to ask for a raise. Let's say somebody wants to ask for a raise and they're like, I want to ask for a raise. And the first day they walk up towards their boss's office and they take a right-hand turn and go to the bathroom because they're like, I couldn't do it. Like I felt, fill in the blank, what do they feel? They might say, I felt like an imposter. I lost my confidence. I felt underneath that is I would say, well, what does that actually feel like to you? Like, what's the actual sensation that's telling you that you have imposter syndrome? What's the actual sensation that's telling you you don't have confidence? And then they would say something like, oh, like a pit in my stomach or tension in my chest or a clawing in my throat. Like they're going to come up with some type of sensory marker and somewhere in their body and that's actually why they didn't follow through with the conversation, is because of that sensory experience.
Yes.
Right. And now we label those sensory experiences things like imposter syndrome or fear of failure. I don't know. We put all kinds of names on them, but at the root of them all are sensations. Now, when we work with people to change this, we work with people at the sensory level, because if you can change their sensory experience, then they will automatically have a different action that they'll take. So you can have two people walking towards that door and to ask for a raise, and one person with a certain sensory experience will take the right-hand turn and go to the water cooler, and the other person with a different sensory experience will walk right through that door.
Yeah. And is it how I interpret the sensation? So let's say I am scared of asking for the raise and I have that my stomach is in all knots, and is it that I feel that stomach knot and either I'm not consciously aware of it, I just take a right turn and be like, I can't do it. And I still have that same sensation in the other scenario of like, I feel that knot in my stomach. I know it's warning me because it's afraid that we'll be getting a no or we're turned down or they say we're not good enough. I am aware of it and go in anyway. Or is it that the sensation actually changes?
Yeah. So this is, I love this question. This is so awesome because this is kind of like the three levels of awareness of this work. So you name the first level. So I've got this queasiness in my stomach, let's say, and I don't even realize that that's why I take the right-hand turn to the water cooler, but I do. So in that case, my behavior, I didn't follow through with my intended behavior because I had that sensory experience, but I'm not even aware of it. That's
Right.
one thing. Now, the next level, and like this is kind of the interesting feeling stuck, unstuck, what do I do kind of level, is that you're actually aware of the sensory experience that you're having. You may actually be labeling it as something, and you decide to override that sensory experience with your conscious mind, and then you take the action kind of like anyway. So there is a lot of value in that. And at the same time, what we know is that you can never totally block out the sensory experience that you're having. It's always going to find expression. So for that person, they may walk in to ask for the raise, but they'll ask for it like, would you mind if I have, like, I really would really like some more money, but it's okay if you don't give it to me. It's fine. If I don't really need it that bad, never mind. Have a great day. You know,
Yes.
sort of thing, because the sensory, or even if they walk in and go, I demand a raise, I'm working for it, and they behave in such a way to try to override those sensations. In any way, what happens is their sensory experience and their motor expression are not in alignment.
Yeah.
They're not actually behaving in a way that's aligned with what they're actually feeling internally. And that will always bleed through, because when we're talking with anybody, really what's happening is our subconscious mind is communicating with the other person's subconscious mind, more so than our conscious minds are communicating, right? Our subconscious mind processes about 20 million bits of information every second, and your conscious mind processes 40, not 40 million, 40 bits, period, of information every second. So when you're in conversation with someone, your subconscious is reading their subconscious. So I don't know if you've ever been in a conversation with someone and they're telling you something and you're like, something's off though. You're like, I don't know what is off about the conversation that I'm having with this person, but something doesn't feel right. And when we get that it doesn't feel right, then we basically say no to that because it doesn't feel in alignment. So what we do with people is we take a step back and say, if you can actually align your sensory state to be in alignment with the motor expression you actually want to put forth, when you're aligned, then you're in integrity. That's what true integrity is, because you're acting in integrity with actually how you feel and how you think, and your words and your actions are all on the same page. And when you can do that, you are authentic. Right? That's when you're truly an authentic person. That's kind of the definition of being authentic. When your sensations, your thoughts, your words, and your actions are all on the same page, they're all aligned. If you walk into a room and ask for something in an aligned state, it's almost impossible not to get it.
Wow. Say that again. That's if you're in a aligned state, if you are in an aligned state and you walk into the room and ask for something, it's almost impossible to not get it.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you are so in alignment. And people, that will project to someone else's subconscious mind integrity. Because remember, my subconscious mind is communicating with your subconscious mind. And if I show up in full integrity, that just looks like, it's like the North compass, like brrr, it just comes into such alignment. It's so direct. Doesn't have to be, direct, but it can be compassionate, it can be empathetic, it can be all those things too. But it's just so aligned, it's impossible not to get what you want when you're that aligned.
And how do I get there? Going back to the example of I'm walking to the door and want to ask for a raise. And in a normal scenario, my stomach would be in all knots. Yeah. So I'm still in that middle. I'm like, okay, I hear you, but I'm still going in. How do I get to the part where my stomach is not in knots? Is that through... is it through breathing or body awareness, or can it also be like, I'm going to do it 100 times till my stomach stops being in knots? What is the approach to get there?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a process, but I'll lay it out for you. So the first process is, if we go back to that become aware of, decode, modify, reframe kind of idea. So the first is we have to become aware of what we're actually experiencing. And then we always start off with our entry point, or what we call somatic practices. So somatic practices are things like self-massage, mindful movement, breath work, meditation. Like that's like the ground floor though. That's not the end all be all. That's the gateway. That's the entryway. Because what that will help someone learn to do is to actually what we call regulate their nervous system, bring their nervous system back into a sense of regulation. So when someone's really queasy in their stomach, their nervous system is moving towards being dysregulated. And so what they have to learn to do first is bring it back into a sense of regulation. So now for some people, just doing a lot of somatic practices will help fortify their nervous system enough to help them be able to move through challenging experiences and situations. If you really want to transform it though, we go deeper and we actually help teach people how to consciously begin to change their internal sensory state without things that look like self-massage, movement, breathing, or meditation, right? So you actually begin to consciously learn how to change your sensory state internally just through attentional shifts and changes. That's what we call that our cross-mapping method. So, and you can do that at any time. Like it won't look funny to somebody else, right? It won't look like I'm getting ready in the bathroom and I'm going to do some power posing or something. I mean, there's good changes that happen in that, but as you get a little more into these practices, you can do it without having anybody know that you're actually doing it.
That's incredible.
And so that's how you really start to change that internally. And then our kind of, we go even a little further when limiting beliefs are really tenacious, when they're really based in potentially traumatic patterns from people's past, when they're really sticky, then we have other practices that we do with folks to help release a lot of those sticky patterns, get down, do some deeper work, kind of let go of some scarier things, do some deeper healing when stuff's really sticky or problematic. But for a lot of people, just learning that how to do cross mapping really helps to gain a conscious awareness of shifting your own internal sensory systems to be able to become more aligned, because that's whatever you have with that sensory system, your motor expressions are going to be a natural expression of it.
That's absolutely fascinating. I did not know that the power of the mind can actually change what you feel in your body.
Yes, yeah, you can. Yeah, we do that all the time. That's what we do with our work.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you. What is the key in the work that you do that isn't just feeling better in the short term, but actually having that deep, sustained change that someone wants to see in their life?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit before, Theresa. It's really, for us, it's about embracing both sides. I mean, every sensory experience has two sides. I mean, actually, everything in the universe has two sides, right? Everything in the natural world has two sides. A lot of the work that I love to do and we love to do here is really based in natural laws. So we do a lot of work with natural laws. Like if you look out in nature, nature follows a set of laws, a blueprint of creation, basically. How nature creates everything is based on the same kind of blueprint. And because we are a part of nature, humans are natural beings also, like what we want to create in our world is also based on these same principles or laws. So that we understand how to apply these laws in our lives, then we actually can create with less drama, with less trauma, with less issues, with less problems, just more easily and more seamlessly. And so one of the laws that we love to work with is called the law of polarity. So law of polarity basically states that everything is created as a whole. And when we have attachment to one side or other side of the polarity, that's when we experience suffering. So the more attachment I have to one side or the other, if I really feel attached or repulsed by something, then I'm actually polarized. My mind is polarized. Yeah. So by learning how to embrace both sides of an issue, that's when we become free. So what we do with our work is, from a sensory experience, we actually teach people to, we have a process we take them through, to actually have them have a somatic or embodied, tangible experience of embracing both sides of something. And when you can do that in your body, then all of a sudden, it's like you can just start doing it in the world. But you have to be able to do it inside of your body first. So for us, it's really about teaching people to embrace both sides. We have a little saying that anything you can't be with will control you ultimately. Mm-hmm. Right? Anything you can't be with in your life, it will ultimately control you, because you'll be making decisions based on it. Yeah. And so any experiences in your body that you don't like or don't want to be with are actually controlling you. Because then we're not doing things that we think will bring on that experience in our bodies, and then we're actually cutting ourselves off from life, or from doing things in life that potentially could be the exact path that we need to create the life that we want to create. So for us, it's about embracing both sides. Mm-hmm. And what we say, widening our window of tolerance to be with the things we don't like, while simultaneously learning how to consciously change that state. Mm-hmm. And you have to have both parts to that, because it has to be a loving embrace, and at the same time, it has to be a conscious request to create change.
Yeah. So, you had said before that people problems in the workplace are often invisible, if I got that right.
Yeah.
And what are the types of invisible barriers that you've seen in companies, and how does it show up in a company as like their pain points, maybe?
Yeah.
And how can organizations work with that?
Yeah. So when we really go into organizations and start to work with it, and what we really see is the most invisible thing actually are, and this is going to be a surprise to you, I'm sure, because you've done so many great interviews on this, is there's past trauma, perceptions, right? And preferences. Those are really when someone is just filtering reality in a way that they've been conditioned to filter it, and we don't realize that not everyone has been conditioned to filter it that way. So the invisible problem is really how we're perceiving things more than anything else. And we really perceive things based on our past traumas. And that could be smaller traumas or larger traumas. I don't really like to get into trauma judging so much, because what my question always is not what does the person have to say about it, what's the story of the trauma, but rather what does your nervous system have to say about it? Mm-hmm. So if your nervous system is dysregulated in some way and a lot of times during the day, our nervous system gets dysregulated, we don't even realize that's what's happening, mm-hmm. right? Because it just shows up as we're being confused, or it shows up as we're feeling a little ticked off, or it shows up as we get a little frozen, or it shows up like it can show up in these really subtle ways. And that's the invisible thing that happens, because most people just think that they're struggling or that they're broken or that they are something, right? And they don't realize that this is actually linked back to their nervous system, how their nervous system has been conditioned in an earlier experience in their life. And so for us, it's really helping people, again, become aware of that. And when we're filtering it, not because we're dumb, not because we're not nice people, not because we're good, bad, right or wrong. We're filtering it because our nervous system is filtering out reality in order to keep us safe and protected. And so I might need to filter it a certain way to feel safe. You might need to filter it a different way to feel safe. The problem is that we start fighting each other about what needs to happen in an organization for you to feel safe or me to feel safe, because we're both filtering it differently. That's the invisible thing that shows up. And we just keep going back and we say, what's really happening? It's that our perceptions are based on our pasts. And we can get in and do that with organizations without it being a therapeutic model. Like, we don't have to go and deconstruct everyone's past content that they're experiencing, because that's not really where the problem is. The problem is in their current nervous system dysregulation based on what's going on in their daily experience. And so if we can help people harmonize or re-regulate or normalize their nervous system function, it's amazing what will change in people's perceptions when they have a regulated nervous system.
That's so interesting. Now, just thinking about a big company CEO who has the perspective like, I don't care about people's nervous systems. I mean, there would be a billion positive outcomes of having happier employees, healthier work environments, and all of that. But even for someone who like looks at the bottom line, is that something where they should be saying like, I care about this?
Well, should they be saying it? Yes, they should absolutely be saying it. Does everyone have that level of awareness? No. I wish they did. I mean, I wish I could tell you that leaders understand that when employees have a regulated and optimally aroused nervous system, that they will be the most productive. I mean, that makes common sense, doesn't it?
Very common sense,
right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't like to use the car analogy because I don't think that people are cars. And at the same time, lots of times I describe this, I have to use the car analogy because people, have a better relationship with that. I said, okay, so if you had a car and let's say normal functioning for the car is 3,000 RPMs. Let's just say that's normal functioning. Now, if you got in your car every day and it was going to 8,000 RPMs, do you think how long is that car going to last? And most people are like, well, I might drive it, but it's not going to last forever or very long. Is it going to work better at 2,000 or 8,000? Well, probably 2,000. Okay. Now, what about if you got in and it was going at 500 RPMs and it barely ran? Would you rather have it at 500 or 2,000? Well, 2,000 is going to work better. That's like our nervous system. So if you're asking people to work at 8,000 RPMs and you're jacking their nervous systems up, they're not productive. And if they're too low, they're not productive. Do you want your company to be the most productive company possible? And most people would say, yes, I would want it to be the most productive possible. Now, some people are more, let's just say, enlightened than others. Some CEOs and leaders are more enlightened. They say, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Let's help our people be more empowered or more regulated, if you will, because it helps them, but more so because it helps the bottom line. That's fine. If that's the attitude, that's fine, because we can go in and help people. But not all CEOs are there. I'd hate to say, but some CEOs don't mind burning their people out, and that's just the way of the world. I wish it was different, but it's not. I mean, I think you could probably relate to that too, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I wish it would be the norm that most companies, I love the car analogy because it's so clear of that most companies and leaders, or all companies and leaders, are like, we want optimal efficiency and energy use of our humans. And that's even thinking about it from a kind of a bottom line of how do I get the most sustained productivity? And then we're adding the human lens on it, and this is how it should be. Like, yes, this is how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not rocket science, by the way. It really isn't that complicated to help people learn how to regulate their nervous system. It's just not. And it doesn't take a lot of time either. But it does take consistency. I mean, that is what it does take. I mean, it takes consistency to practice doing things that regulate their nervous system. And it's kind of builds a lot of momentum. Theresa, like once you actually start doing these practices, and then once you become more aware of what's going on in your system, you become more aware of what's going on in your embodied states, and then you learn to consciously start shifting that stuff, that's where it really starts to take off. And then what you do is then you naturally start gravitating towards things that are really in true alignment with your own purpose. Like really why you're supposed to be here, not from a doing state so much, but from a being state. Like, what's my being state, my purpose state here feels like something to me. And I can take that purpose state into any situation. I can take it into any job. I can take it into any social situation. I can take it into any relationship and always feel like I'm home, always feel like I'm myself in any of those situations. So it starts picking up speed when you do these practices. And can you imagine an organization where everyone felt like they were supposed to be there?
Oh my God, yes.
Could you imagine that? And so you would see a natural reorganization of people like not staying someplace because they felt like they had to be there, and actually go to some place where they felt like, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be. Meanwhile, they create a vacancy in the place that they left because they thought they were supposed to be there, and someone else steps into it going, this is where I'm supposed to be. And so I can't help but think a lot of people out there are just taking up space in some place that they feel like they're supposed to be. And that's actually someplace someone else is taking up space where they feel like they're supposed to be. And they swap places, they feel like this is where I belong, kind of thing, right? And so this is where I belong to be, sort of thing, right? And but it takes courage to do that, and it takes our nervous system to be regulated and all those things to be able to make that switch. But that's like my utopian dream, is that we all basically just gravitate to the places we know we're supposed to be based on our purpose state in the world. And could you just imagine what it would be like to work at a place like that?
And this is honestly, that's the vision behind my company. That's my mission behind my company, is that we can do this big reshuffle and getting people into the place where they're meant to be, because the majority of people are not, their work is not aligned. And how I'm just like, imagine the whole country or the whole world of the majority of people doing work that's aligned, that where they feel like they're supposed to be and do that work. Oh my God, the world would be such a better place.
Yes, I know. Exactly. And that starts with that sense of you're like aligning your own nervous system and knowing what it feels like in your body, coming back to your body, because that's where all those cues come from. When we disregard our body cues, that's when we stay in places that we shouldn't be anymore. Because if we listen to our body cues, like they start telling us, and like in my case, they started off as whispers and they became screams. And those screams were pain and high blood pressure and acid reflux, and I give you the whole ugly list. But that was my body screaming that it was time to change because I wasn't listening to it.
And my theory is that it's actually on purpose that we're not listening to our bodies, because when you think about capitalism and the conveyor belt, they don't want people sitting there and listening to their bodies and saying, doing this movement 2,000 times a day doesn't feel good. You don't want that. So let's teach people to not listen to their body. And then we can have a productive society that makes money for the companies.
Exactly. And at the risk of just, again, burning people out and just replacing them, right? And again, so people in those who are making those decisions, if they were more in touch with their bodies, they'd be making those decisions differently, because you can't perpetuate harm onto someone else when you actually feel something yourself internally.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, absolutely. And from my perspective, we can't control what the people on top in charge of big organizations, companies do and feel like, but when we start to listen to our own bodies, that starts to give us clues of like, oh, that upset stomach or that headache or the insomnia or whatever, that high blood pressure, whatever it is that so many of us feel day in and day out, that this is our body giving us a very clear signal, and to be like, okay, let me actually listen to this.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. That's so cool that you are not just doing it on an individual level, but on an organizational level.
Yeah.
I need to ask one more thing, because I thought that sounded so fascinating. You use something called a motivational maps assessment. What is that tool, and what does it reveal that most of us miss?
Yeah, so the motivational maps is really, really cool. So first of all, motivation is always about energy for us. It's like, really what are our energy levels, and why are we, again, energized to do certain things and not other things. But here's the deal. So I'd love to say this about motivation. Everyone is always motivated. Some people say, I'm demotivated, I don't have motivation. And my ask is, well, what are you motivated to do right now? Now, see, some people are motivated to stay in bed. And they might say, I'm demotivated. And I'll say, well, what are you motivated to do? Well, what are you actually doing? So first of all, everyone is always motivated. So I don't believe in demotivation. I talk about it because people are like, people want to talk about it. But once I really start talking about this to people, it's like, listen, demotivation is actually a myth. Everyone is always motivated for something. Okay. Now, there's different varying energy levels associated with that, but that's one thing. And we can actually start to get into that with motivational maps. But really, what the motivational maps looks at is what we call the full spectrum of motivation. So we do an assessment, and it kind of feeds you out your 9 primary motivational drivers. Now, everyone has all 9 of these drivers. However, they're all in different orders of importance, different levels of intensity, different degrees of opposition, and different levels of satisfaction. And so when you look at that full spectrum of motivation, you can learn a couple of things. Number one, only 20% of people actually know what motivates them. When we give the motivational map assessment, we ask people, what motivates you? Only 20% of people can actually pick what we call their top 3 motivators. 80% of people don't know what motivates them actually. And this is a problem, because then we actually are chasing things that we think is supposed to motivate us that actually doesn't motivate us. And then it actually takes energy to chase those things rather than giving us energy. When you understand what motivates you and the order and the intensity of it, you actually will know what naturally gives you energy, not takes energy. Right? So everything either gives or takes energy. When you're actually when you're actually setting things up that give you energy, then you naturally can, you have energy, right? You can do whatever you want. Plenty of energy left over for everything in your life. You can grow, build, produce, whatever it happens to be. Now, so if only 20% of people actually know that, well, that's a problem. So you can learn what actually motivates you. And we do this with people, and they're like, oh my God, like that explains why I feel de-energized, because I think I'm supposed to be motivated for this, and it's actually not that, it's this instead. So we give them language around that, number one. And number two, even if you know what's motivating for you, your environment has to feed it back to you. So you actually have to be in an environment that supports your motivational profile. So it's kind of like both an inner and an outer thing that goes on here. You have to know what motivates you internally, and then your environment has to feed it back to you. And if it's not feeding it back to you, then you're actually not getting energy from your environment. And then we have to ask, well, is there changes that you can make within this environment that you're in, within the job that you're in, or do you need to be looking for work elsewhere? And lots of times it's just a matter of reorganizing things within the workplace that you're already in to then feed back your motivators to you. So again, the two problems are, if I don't know what motivates me, number one, then I might be putting myself in an environment that feeds back things that de-energize me, and I don't realize why, because I think I'm supposed to, or I should chase those things. That's one problem. The other problem is, even if I do know what motivates me, I might not be in an environment that feeds it back to me that actually will give me energy every day. So, but once you have the motivational map language, then you have more clarity around actually setting that up and creating systems of feedback based on the motivational system. So those are some of the really just the cool takeaways with the motivational map profile. And again, we do this for individuals, for dyads, for organizations, for teams. That's one of the most fun things to do with organizations and teams, because then they actually create a motivational language within themselves to be able to feedback with one another on.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it's so cool because in my work, I talk a lot about doing things that energize you versus doing things that drain you. And I use the 𝘊𝘀𝘀𝘊𝘀𝘀 assessment. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's incredible if you're not. And it tells us the things that we do that gives us energy or the things we do that drain us. And now I'm like, okay, this motivation map really puts another layer on it, because now it's also like the environment that we do it in, if that energizes or drains us.
Yes, exactly. And you get really good data, right? I mean, you get data back on it. And then what we do with organizations and individuals is we remap, where you do another motivational map a few months later after making changes. And then you can see what changed in the motivational profile or in the overall level of motivation. So based on what someone's overall level of motivation is, you can actually predict how long they're actually going to stay in the job that they're currently in. And this is one of the things that we love to feed back with people on and say, hey, I noticed that your motivational level is at this level. Can we talk about like what's going on in work? Are you planning to be here much longer? Like what's happening for you? And it's pretty accurate. It's kind of like scarily accurate in that once you start digging into it.
Can listeners take the motivational maps assessment on their own, or would they have to work with someone to take it?
So first thing, so you can take the motivational map assessment and just get the printout and then look through your motivational profile yourself, or you can get the printout and then get a debrief also. So we do both of those things. Obviously, we think the debrief is a more detailed, right? It's more in depth, because the printout gives you a certain amount of information, but during the debrief, we actually do some coaching around your map and help you then start to do some more kind of specified changes based on the map in your situation. So, but you can take the map by itself or do a debrief as well.
That's so amazing. I'm going to take this assessment right after our call, and then I'll be messaging you to learn more about it.
Yeah, well, just send me an email. Send us an email afterwards. We'll hook you up.
Oh, love it. And if our listeners walk away with this conversation with one takeaway to how they show up, how they lead, how they work as an employee, or even how they show up in the world, what do you want them to take away from this conversation?
You know, the thing that I'd love to share, and that if we had a sign above our door, at our virtual academy, if you walk onto a campus and there's like a sign or like above the arch or something. So our sign is actually a quote from the 𝘊𝘀𝘀𝘊𝘀𝘀𝘊𝘀𝑠, which says, what you cannot find in your own body, you will never find elsewhere. And so a lot of the work that we do is, if you want something on the outside of yourself that you don't have yet, it's only because you have not found that inside yet. Because as soon as you find anything inside of your body, then you automatically can see it outside of yourself. And so that's the work that we do. So if you want more peace on the outside, you need to have a loving and powerful relationship with the peace inside of yourself. If you want more love outside, you have to have more love inside. If you want more abundance outside, you have to have more abundance inside first before it'll show up externally. And there's actually, even though that's like a really old quote from the 𝘊𝘀𝘀𝘊𝘀𝘀𝘊𝘀𝑠, there's actually neuroscience that supports that. That I love talking about, and that's what we talk about in our work as well. But it's a deep truth that I think if people just really experienced it and explored that more, their lives can change really remarkably. It's really pretty cool.
This is so powerful. What an amazing, powerful end to this amazing conversation, Brian. And before we leave this conversation, where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about you and the amazing work that you do?
Oh yeah, thanks so much. We're pretty easy to find. You can find us at the 𝘊𝘀𝘀𝑐𝑜𝑎𝑐𝑦.com, and you can come and check out what we have going on there, our free library, our services, our podcast is over there too. We do a lot of education on the science of physiology, of motivation, all that kind of stuff. And and check out our courses there as well. Easy to find us at 𝘊𝘀𝑐𝑜𝑎𝑐𝑦.com, or email us at info@𝘊𝘀𝑐𝑜𝑎𝑐𝑦.com.
Thank you so much, Brian, for being here. I am going to be following you for sure, and I highly recommend our listeners to do too. This was just an incredible conversation. I have so many takeaways, so thank you for being here today.
Cool. Thanks so much, Theresa, for having me. I'm really excited to have the conversation with you, and boy, like time just flew right by.
Wow, what a conversation. From hidden belief systems to why your stomach might be in knots before asking for that raise, Brian gave us a masterclass in what it really takes to feel aligned, not just in your career, but really in your entire life. And I loved that Brian gave me access to the Motivational Map assessment. I could not wait to take it right after our conversation, and it's a really cool assessment that helps you understand what truly drives you at work. And I just have to share my results with you. My top motivator came up as the spirit, which means autonomy, freedom, and the ability to make my own decisions. And honestly, it is 100% spot on. Back when I worked in HR and recruiting in a traditional corporate setting, there was no autonomy. I had to sit at my desk Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, and do the things I was told to do. And even now, it makes my whole body tense up to just think about it. And I know that might be a work environment that's fantastic for some people, but for me, it was really soul-sucking. I felt stifled and misaligned, and I was doing a great job. I was exceeding expectations. But inside, I felt like I was operating in a cage. And fast forward to now, I run my own business, and the difference is night and day. Now I get to follow my own rules, my gut, work on ideas I believe in, create programs that genuinely change women's lives. I get to work when and where I do my best work. And that freedom to create and serve with purpose, that really fills me with meaning and purpose. My other motivators showed up as the creator and the builder. And those were spot on too. I do live for solving big problems, creating new solutions, and working towards a life with financial freedom. And I am so grateful that my career really allows me to live in that alignment. And it really feels like alignment. I'm energized, lit up, and deeply connected to the work I do. So if you're listening and your current role feels misaligned, like it's draining you instead of fueling you, I want you to know that it doesn't have to be that way. It's absolutely possible to find work that lights you up because it's aligned with what truly motivates you. And if you're ready to explore what that might look like for you, you can go ahead and book a free career clarity call with my team so we can help you get crystal clear on your next career step and unlock that sweet career clarity in a record time. Because you deserve to feel good in your work and in your body. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and I will see you back here next week. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Career Clarity Unlocked. If you're feeling stuck in that what's next spiral and are ready to finally break free, let's chat. You can book your free career clarity call where we'll uncover what's really important to you, tackle any obstacles holding you back, and map out your best next step. Schedule your free 30-minute call today on careerbloomcoaching.com. And before you head out, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. If today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration, please leave a review. It really helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or on social media. Your support truly means the world. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.